What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Wicked Prepping YouTube channel. What you're about to see is highlights from our past stream. If you'd like to see the whole stream, you can click the link in the description box below, which will take you to an unlisted video showing the whole podcast. We stream usually 3 times a week on Twitch. If you would like to follow us, join the conversation, smash that like button here on YouTube, follow us on Twitch, and let's start talking.
All teams ready?
You are assimilated. Resistance is futile.
All right, so the first article I want to look at real quick was coronavirus-related inflammatory syndrome emerges among UK children. It says a report, there's a growing concern that COVID-19 related inflammatory syndrome is emerging in children in the UK. Those that are infected seem to be experiencing overlapping of features of toxic syndrome and atypical Kawasaki disease. And Kawasaki disease typically strikes those under 5. And it's an illness that causes swelling and redness of the blood vessels. It's basically an immuno overreaction of your body, where it's almost like a cytokine storm, which the blood parameters that they're seeing in these kids is consistent with a severe COVID-19 that they're seeing in the children. And COVID-19 does a very similar thing with the cytokine storms, where your body's immune system overreacts. And that's kind of what Kawasaki disease is. But now they're beginning to see this trend, and it might be that the virus is triggering Kawasaki in these children. And I know in a past live stream, we kind of talked about, was it impacting children or not? This is an interesting development because it's another example of how much we don't know about this and how crazy this virus is and how many different things it can do. And you may be out there protesting and don't give a hoot about yourself. You just want to go back to work. But what if you get it and you bring it home and you have young children and your child gets Kawasaki disease, which is treatable, but they're still going to the emergency room, still dealing with the hospitals. It's still not
have a
something,
chance to die.
Yeah, it's not something you want your kids to have.
Exactly.
And we're finding just every day new possible potential unknown risks of this that we need to be careful with.
I kind of don't like the idea of the constant updates that news articles are putting out about symptoms of COVID-19, because it's really hard for them to research it this fast. So how much of it is actually related to COVID-19, or how much of it isn't been
right? And they don't know, and they were very
other underlying
right, and they were
symptoms.
very clear with this that they don't know. It's very similar to COVID-19, and this is a trend that they've been following for a long time. So to see a spike in it at the same time that COVID-19 cases are spiking is curious. So they're going to do a bunch more studies on it. They're not saying that it does. It's just an unknown risk. There's that potential. And then there was some additional information The Guardian put out. Again, it seems to be severe inflammation that's similar to that's seen in adult patients with COVID-19 infections. And, they're thinking that it may be a post-infection inflammatory response, again, where your immune system goes into overdrive. CNN, noted that our understanding of this condition in children, that's why I highlighted it, is limited. They've got to look into this and find out, but it is concerning and worthy of study. But there's a lot of things that we just haven't had time to study because everybody's been so focused on the acute issues of saving people's lives, and we haven't had a lot of time go by to see these things. It's interesting that similar cases have also been reported in Spain and Italy. And the United States is just published a case with a 6-month-old infant who was diagnosed with Kawasaki disease and COVID-19. So there does seem to be some kind of a link between the two. That's just statistically stands out.
Right, and I get that they can link it, but okay, so the part that I'm this is why I was trying to get at is we know that we have more than enough people who have died from the virus. We can study them, we can autopsy them, we could see that this affects our T cells, we could see this destroys our immune system. So is this really a side effect of COVID-19, or is it a side effect of your immunosuppression? Kind of like when you have AIDS, you don't usually die directly from AIDS, you die from the complications, which are like the
Yeah.
after your immune system is completely compromised, the foreign bodies move in and everything like that. So they
Right.
might be seeing a spike because these kids' immune
Could be a
systems are getting
side
wrecked.
effect.
Right.
Right.
Like so that's the problem with the titling. Not saying, well, you're giving out the information. You're
Right.
giving out the
No,
information. Great.
I'm totally.
I'm saying that I'm tired of seeing articles where they're like, they tout it as fact without actually knowing that's fact, and there's no actual way of proving that it's directly tied to coronavirus yet.
Correct.
There's a handful of symptoms that are horrible. I won't want to get them, like the hemorrhagic system, where actually you drown in your own blood, basically from internal bleeding. That's pretty much proven. I mean, we're talking hundreds of thousands of confirmed cases of that.
I got some pictures later.
Oh, awesome. You're talking the respiratory failure and everything like that, completely proven. Even the toes, there's been like over like 300,000 skin conditions.
I've got a mention of the toes.
But a lot of people don't understand when you get the flu can manifest itself in a rash.
Yes.
So, I mean, there's these horrible side effects that go along with viruses, but like I'm tired of seeing news articles every single day because it just promotes fear mongering.
Yeah.
Like, I love reading about it because I'm interested in medical stuff, and I can separate a side effect from the symptom. Like most people, if they run out and get COVID, they're not going to have the COVID toes and a skin rash or anything like that. They're going to have the most common symptoms. But these are like 13%, 14% affected rates, and they could be side effects triggered by your DNA, your blood type, and your underlying health conditions and your genetics, right?
Yeah.
So that's the information that I want to see them sort out before they start publishing articles every single day with new side effects.
No,
because it takes away from the virus, in my opinion. Because if you read our chat right now, they're kind of making fun of the fact that everything is coronavirus.
Right.
House on fire, bad hair day, your phone won't charge. Coronavirus can cause erectile dysfunction. Okay.
It can.
But yeah. That's the thing right there. Is it takes away from the severity of it, in my opinion, because there's so much bad shit already associated with it. Why do they keep needing? I guess it's the news. It creates drama. It creates flair.
But here's why it's important, because this message was delivered that it only impacts old people, and most people are going to be asymptomatic or a very mild case. And so a lot of people have discounted the unknown risks of the virus, and there's a lot of them. And, I'm going to finish running through some of this stuff.
Oh, yeah, I don't mean to sidetrack you.
No.
Really. Like I said, the way you're giving out the information is great because you're actually fact-checking it, and you're when you say something, you're also backing up by saying we don't know how related it is.
Yeah, and
this is just a common
right,
news.
and they were very clear in this, and I even have highlighted it on the slide because they need to do more research on it. But it is very odd to have, and again, it may just be a trigger for Kawasaki disease. So it's not giving you Kawasaki disease, but statistically, it is interesting and needs to be looked at, because most people figure this doesn't have anything to do with younger kids. I
got a new conspiracy for Conspiracy Theory Sunday, man, real quick.
Yeah.
So we have it on record.
All right.
What if the coronavirus isn't SARS-CoV-2? It's just like a manufactured carrier virus that can inject all kinds of fucked up stuff. And now there's like 4, 5, 6 different viruses that are all in this, in this non-natural carrier. So they can take a look at the virus in a microscope, and it looks different all over the place, right? And it looks weird and different and mutated and everything else like that. What if it was manufactured to do that on purpose, and that's why we're seeing so many different side effects?
Or another interesting thing that people are beginning to question is, has this thing been out there much longer than we thought? Because it seems to have brought in pieces of a lot of other viruses, and it's highly, highly complex, which is really unusual for a virus that's just jumped to humans. So that's kind of an interesting question. Maybe this thing was out there a lot longer, and for some reason it just surfaced in Wuhan. That's an interesting deal.
What if it hasn't necessarily surfaced in Wuhan? What if they've been the ones pumping it out on purpose for some time,
for a while,
making it stronger, studying it in masses, studying on their own population, and then some doctors got a hold of one of the patients that developed a sense of moral compass they knew they were going to die anyways from the virus, and they knew it was their job to get this information out there, and they went to it. And that's why all the whistleblower doctors have been silenced. All the initial cases have been silenced.
Yeah.
What if this shit's been out there for, like I said, like a very long time? But I don't want to get you off topic.
No.
While we're streaming, and get the chat involved, and
No,
we can go
man,
back,
that's the whole
we'll
point.
be able to talk about it.
Yeah.
But basically, all that's going on in the chat right now is they're kind of making fun of the coronavirus symptoms. And then Shootout says that she has a 5-year-old, and she's worrying about her getting it because she can't control where her mom go. So even if she doesn't get it, she could still be a carrier, though, right?
What's that? She could?
The kid.
Yeah. Kids can be kids can be carriers. That's one of the reasons why there was the issue with schools, because they're packed in there and they can bring it to other people. So a couple other articles, and again, the point is not to fearmonger with this,
right? And we're not,
right?
I'm saying articles in general.
And there's some things that are more speculation right now that need research, and then there are other things that we know, and there's good studies coming out. So Forbes published an article about coronavirus causing strokes in young people and middle-aged people. This is absolutely being documented.
Right, and I've read about this, and this is horrible.
Is absolutely factual. So they say in here that we're learning more and more about the devastating effects of the virus as it attacks other organs, including the kidney, heart, and brain. However, the virus's ultimate target may inflict the most damage through blood vessels, leading to the formation of blood clots and excessive bleeding. And it's not just attacking any size blood vessels in young adults, but it tends to go after larger blood vessels that feed important parts of the brain and are critical to movement, thinking, and breathing. And those strokes the effects can be permanent or life-changing. Strokes are presenting later on down the road in young people who were asymptomatic, meaning that it's beginning to be a growing silent risk for those with no or very mild symptoms. They're having more and more young people who were fine, never had symptoms, all of a sudden having strokes and being rushed to the hospital and finding out that they had COVID-19 and it had attacked these large blood vessels. For instance, and this is one example, and they're getting ready to publish this in the New England Journal of Medicine, which is a very renowned journal of medicine. They had just at this one hospital in Mount Sinai, which is a large hospital, but they had 5 COVID-19 patients who suffered large vessel strokes over a 2-week period, all under the age of 50. One of them died, one still hospitalized, one's discharged at home, and 2 are still in rehabilitation. And they were noting that what was striking is that none of the 5 had even mild symptoms. They had no symptoms. They just all of a sudden had strokes. And when they did the blood work, they had COVID-19, and they caused this coagulation and clots in their large arteries. And that's not a good prognosis or expected outcome from people who are impacted by this. So, again, you get these people that are, that downplay it, and we don't want to overdo the risk, but, saying, hey, if I get it, I'm fine with that. I'm just going to go back to work, do my thing. You really have to understand all the different ways. You could be completely asymptomatic and end up with a stroke and not be able to speak the rest of your life if you survive. There are risks with this thing, and a lot of people don't know that. They don't understand all the risks. All they've heard is, oh, the old people die from it, but I'm younger, so it'll just be a mild or asymptomatic case, and I'm fine. There is an article in here talking about the COVID toes and hives, and it's saying that, there's some preliminary studies that suggest it can also affect the skin and whatnot. Again, they were very clear in the article. My thing was not so much about the skin and the toes and all that, but just the fact that they tied it to chickenpox, measles, and mono, because we had talked about the fact that this loves to attack your central nervous system, and the fact that it has the potential to remain latent or dormitory in your
Kind of like the
spinal
shingles
column.
effect, right?
Yes, just like chickenpox, and now they're starting to suspect that. And again, that's a risk most people don't know. Yeah, you can get it and be fine, but 10 years from now, you could be fighting off an over-inflammatory response from your
Dude,
system.
so you know how there's people that are kind of like burnouts, right? That did just like way too much acid 30, 40 years ago, and they still get like the flashbacks, like the random highs because it sits in your spinal fluid. Like that's similar to what this is. Could you imagine getting this virus right now and literally being fine for 15 years, and then 15 years
Yeah.
later you have a stroke and die, and they find out it was actually because
People,
you had picked up
yeah. I
COVID-19
mean,
or
people get
something?
shingles every day.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm getting ready to, pretty soon here I have to go get my shingles vaccine because that's not something I want. Because I had, chicken pox as a kid,
Well, yeah,
and
almost everybody did.
I'm getting to that age, so and whatnot. Again, some of the other things in this article I found most interesting, not so much the skin stuff, but this doctor, noted that she finds the range of possible systems remarkable and notes that for a virus to do all of these things that it's doing within the first 5 months of existing in humans is pretty striking to me. And I think a lot of people are starting to say that and be like, this is crazy because viruses typically early on don't do this. It's only after they mutate, and you get a second wave and a third wave. Then you start getting different things. And this thing does a bunch of different stuff right out of the bag, which is odd, and people are noticing it. So real quick, Los Angeles Times said the coronavirus infection may cause lasting damage throughout the body. And again, they're talking about the fact that it may lie dormant in the body for years and spring back later in different forms. We don't know. Again, talking about chickenpox. And I find it interesting that a lot of sources in the medical community are now starting to really kind of hone in on this latency thing and the chickenpox and it coming back. That tells me where there's smoke, there's something there. May not prove to be true, once we do the studies and everything, but interesting. And they're saying that, chicken pox hides quietly for decades and then gives you shingles. Hepatitis B sits in your body and then gives you liver cancer years later. Ebola, which it mimics in some ways, takes up residence in your vitreous fluid in your eyes and can cause blindness and vision impairment. And 40% of those infected that live. And remember, Ebola kills right around 50% of the people who get it, I believe. Right now is what the case fatality is on it. So that's a striking number. So, I mean, it wouldn't be unusual. This is a normal thing for viruses, a lot of them to do that kind of stuff. So we ought to be thinking about that with COVID, that's a possibility. You get it, you don't know what you're carrying for the rest of your life.
So here's an interesting take on COVID and why. So let me just get my whole thought process out real quick.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to be doing that thing where I'm jumping back and forth. But basically, kind of where I'm leaning towards more, if this comes out that it was lab produced, I'm leaning more away from the fact that they were really interested in the virus itself and what the virus can do. I think that they found that this is a very good transmitter and it's very good at destroying your immune system. And I really feel like they were able to figure out that the more times you get infected by it, the harder it hits your system. So I think that we definitely could be onto something with that thought process that this has been out there much longer than anybody already thought. And even if you already experienced a wave of it or an asymptomatic wave of it, or maybe you have the flu and you go get tested and it ends up not being the flu, but you have all the symptoms, you could have already been hit with this once or twice. I do know if I was going to make
which raises the immunity question,
right? And that's what I'm saying. Like, why don't we have immunity to it yet? So I know if I was going to try and release some type of weaponized virus, I would want it to go out to as many people as possible before bringing any attention to it. So what if that was the whole point? Was that this was developed as a perfectly mastermind carrier? Like it was really good at doing one thing: infecting people, spreading between people, and hiding in your immune system, like hiding in your body to come out later. So when you get reinfected, when you come into contact with certain germs, because dude, there's viruses constantly around you, and because of hand washing, antibiotics, vitamins, good nutrition, just healthier breeding, generations of building up immunity to it, we've built up immunity to these surface viruses, these everyday viruses, from being in similar spaces as other people that are carriers of the germs. We are constantly exposed to germs and bacteria and viruses. So yeah, what if this virus was literally its main job was they found it in bats and they saw what it was doing to bats and how it made them more susceptible to other viruses? What if they were able to mutate it to humans like they did? And now that's what's going on. And that's why there's so many different vast symptoms and it affects everybody so differently. And it can attack your T cells, it can attack your brain, your central nervous system. And what's really scary to me is, okay, so do you know much about like cancer and how it spreads?
Mhm.
So when you get cancer and it's isolated and it hasn't spread to your lymph nodes and hasn't spread throughout your body, it's usually a one and done type thing, but you have those cells in your body for the rest of your life. So you can get like arm cancer, like skin cancer, like a melanoma,
Mhm.
but then that can, proliferate into other types of cancer because your body has already been susceptible to those cells, and then that cancer is going to be in your body pretty much forever. Even if you get the radiation therapy, there's no way of really knowing how cancer free you really are. Like when you're in remission, that's why they say like you're in it, but you're not cured. Obviously,
Right. You're never out of the
right.
woods.
So when you get cancer and it metastasizes into your lymph nodes, you're terminal. That's what they consider terminal. So if this virus is already attacking your lymph nodes, like in your colon, in your prostate, that's not good news. That means that it's going to be very hard to get rid of. And once stuff gets into your lymph nodes, we have no medical way of saving your life. And I think that's the main reason people are dying the way they're dying. Like mechanical breathing isn't helping, antibiotics isn't helping. So that's really the scary part. And that would open up the door to all of the other bacteria or underlying health conditions you didn't even know you had. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
So you're super AIDS. Yeah, Harbinger. Yeah, imagine super AIDS. That's kind of what we're dealing with. It's a super AIDS type virus
It is
that requires
similar.
no bodily fluid transmission.
Nope.
Oh, and wait, so Mojo, you're finally a college graduate. Congratulations,
Hey,
dude.
congratulations. All right. So moving along, because I want to get through this because we really do want to get on with the rest of the discussion on prepping and whatnot. So I want to finish this up because I've got some points that I think are important to at least think about. So Science News published an article, some patients who survive COVID-19 may suffer lasting lung damage. And this article basically was looking at a small sample size, 70 patients, but 66% of them had some level of lung damage, which we knew from the reports coming out of Wuhan and everything that was happening. The interesting thing is these early studies just looked at the severe cases. These were people who had, were in intensive care. So you would kind of expect that they're going to have permanent lung damage. One interesting point that they do bring up, though, is given how much more transmissible this is, that's concerning because COVID-19 could hammer thousands of people in years to come with this. Whereas in comparison, SARS, which had a higher fatality rate but wasn't as transmissible, only infected 8,000 people in the outbreak. And MERS, the Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, which was very fatal, only infected 2,500 people. We're over 3 million cases of this worldwide. So you really can't compare the two because the impact on people is going to be so much more. But what's interesting, I talked the other day about those divers, and I had thought they were from Europe. They were actually,
Austrian.
they were Austrian. But I think I mentioned a different country. They were Austrians, and the doctors went in and they had permanent lung damage. And what they found really surprising was that all 6 of them had only had mild cases. And, they're noting that the damage to the lungs from the scans is irreversible. And the doctors are saying it's shocking because we don't understand what's going on there. And now they're probably going to be lifelong patients. And these people had very mild symptoms. They weren't severe cases. They weren't even hospitalized. They just got over it at home.
No, what I'm saying is, like, I really think that this virus is designed to just cripple your immune system and open up the door to all kinds of external foreign bodies. Like, basically, we're all going to be in a bubble before too long, our own personal immunosuppressed bubbles.
Or we're going to have to accept that A, it's going to kill a lot more people, and B, you're either going to pay for it up front or you're going to pay for it down the road. You can,
Right.
you can pay for it up front with economic damage, but we handle the virus, or you're going to pay for it down the road in terms of all this lifelong care as all these things start coming out. Long term, it's going to crush our health system,
yeah.
and the costs of it are going to be massive. So there's no good answer. I mean, you're going to pay either way. The only difference, you're probably going to have more people die if you focus more on paying for it later.
Now, one thing before, the chat's kind of going off here. Mojo asked, didn't they find a correlation between smoking and COVID-19? I was actually reading a pretty interesting article. I think it was maybe on Forbes, where they were saying that smokers have had a surprisingly low case number of hospitalizations and critical cases, and they think that something with nicotine is actually suppressing the virus.
Yeah, the smoking part of it is bad for you, and a lot of that came from the initial cases out of Wuhan, but you got to remember that almost all men in China smoke. So it's really a bad sample. It's not representative. Of course, the severe cases were going to be smokers because most men in China smoke. But they have found
exactly, Harbinger, the nicotine patches for treatment.
Yes, the nicotine they're noting seems to really hamper the virus's ability. The smoking's not good for you because it damages your lungs, which is not good. But the nicotine, so they're prescribed. I know over in Europe they're starting to prescribe and run trials on nicotine patches, like Harbinger said. So that's interesting. So
back to the immunity thing. You had how does coronavirus kill pulled up?
Yeah. So a couple more quotes here. This was an older article on April 17th. But again, emphasizing that pathologists, they're struggling to understand the damage wrought by the coronavirus as it tears through the body. Its reach can extend to many organs, including the heart, blood vessels, kidneys, gut, and brain. The disease can attack almost anything in the body with devastating consequences, and they note that its ferocity is breathtaking and humbling, and a lot of that is because it attacks the ACE2 receptor, and you have ACE2 receptors throughout your entire body, so it can target anything. It may hit one thing in one person, something different in another. Typically, if you get really bad, it's going to hit your lungs because that's rich in ACE2. But, you've got intestines, kidneys, stomach, bile duct, liver, thyroid, esophagus, bladder, breast, uterus, prostate. All those are in the lining of your blood vessels is rich in ACE2. So that's where it's blowing out blood vessels and strokes and whatnot. You have this throughout your body. So, I mean, it's really scary. They're seeing it, now that they have more people to study, they're seeing this thing attack all areas of your body, which, you don't want to get this if you can avoid getting it. I mean, it's not, I always kind of relate it to investing. And whenever you invest in something, you always want to price the risk into your investment. And it's like people I don't think are pricing in the true risk of this. That initial message that came out that, it's just old people and everybody else is fine. That was like day one of this, and we're past that, and people need to kind of understand that. I told you we talked about the autopsies from New Orleans a couple live streams ago, but I didn't have the pictures. So I kind of just wanted to show what that damage in your lungs looks like because it's crazy.
Do we need to toss like a trigger warning up here? Is this graphic?
No, it's just slides of.
Oh, I was hoping it was graphic.
No, none of those pictures from it. But it's shocking. So this is what healthy lung alveoli look like. And basically, these are your capillaries. And these are the tiniest capillaries in your lungs. They're like basically one blood cell wide. And this is where you exchange oxygen for carbon dioxide. And you have these huge, beautiful, puffy, open areas that are called the alveolar in your lungs. And that's where when you breathe in, all that air gets funneled into these little pockets. That's what a good lung looks like. This is what a lung from one of the autopsies was. And it's just, there's no clear area. Like everything is blown out. You can go over here. This gives you a little bit better view. But all of this stuff is clogged up with clotting in all of these, and it's causing blowouts. And you can already see it's dumping all the garbage and junk, all your leukocytes and that your body sends in to kill it's all getting dumped into these sacs, and there's no room for oxygen to go. There's no circulation because all your capillaries are blown out. So mechanical ventilation does you no good at this point. That's why you die when you get to this point.
You'd basically have to be able to be injected oxygen at that point, and that's just not possible.
And it's not possible.
And we can't heal this damage. There's no way. There's no medical procedures to heal this damage or to reverse that damage, is there?
No, that's done. I mean, it's done. This one's hard to kind of see, but everything in blue, which really doesn't show on here, this is all clotting and extracellular fibrin, which is what makes your clots and everything. It's just all clogged up. It's all clotted in the lungs, and there's no clear space. And again, you can see in this one, all this junk in here that's blown out from all these cells. Remember, they should be nice and clean and open. They're all junked up. And basically, a lot of all this stuff is lymphocytes. In CD4 leukocytes, which is evidence of this cytokine storm in a hypercellular immune response, which I'm going to get into now as we get into the immunity part of it, because it's critical to understand how our body's dealing with this to start to understand about the immunity thing. But again, just to finish up on these, going back to the Science Magazine art, it's not the flu, and they're noting that this virus acts like no pathogen humanity's ever seen. I mean, this thing's like the super virus. I mean, I can't say it was engineered. Nature's pretty brutal, but this is the worst thing nature's put together and thrown out there. And it's crazy, and they just stress that we need to keep an open mind as we go forward with this, because we're still learning. We're in the very, very early phases of this, and people have to resist jumping to conclusions and just saying we're all going to be fine. That may be the case, but this thing's crazy.